now to introduce our final panelist, Jill Fritz, the Michigan Senior State Director of the Humane Society of the United States.
So I'm going to be talking about humanely managing deer conflicts. And I'll be specific. What we're referring to, what I'm referring to in my presentation is situations in urban or suburban areas where there's a proposal to have a deer cull. It's not necessarily removal of diseased deer or other things that we've been talking about, but this is specifically urban or suburban deer culls that have been proposed. What we have found, what our wildlife biologists have found, working with municipalities and cities around the country, is, in our opinion, deer culling just doesn't work. That's the main reason that we tend to oppose them when they're proposed, because they just don't work. We've not found a real correlation between the deer densities and conflicts, whether they're auto conflicts or conflict from guards or whatever it is. In addition, of course, lethal programs can involve inhumane methods, orphan fawns, and what we found, they don't achieve the actual goal that they set out to try to achieve. So that's an important factor. If it doesn't actually do what you're trying to accomplish, then there's just no point. As has been talked about earlier, deer are highly prolific, and there's what's called the bounce back effect, that if you take out a certain amount of deer, the population is going to rebound very quickly. And then more deer will come in from the surrounding areas to fill that void. And I know that Professor Porter has some different ideas on that, but there's also safety concerns with the use of firearms, high-powered firearms, in urban or suburban areas, which has been talked about already as well. As a result of that, oftentimes you're not able to kill the amount of deer within that area because of the safety concerns that you would really need to take out to be effective in your goal. And as a result, you have to go back and do it again and again. And this just happened last month. Our field is going to be so negligible, there's just no point in doing it. So they're going back to the table now, thinking of other options. We don't think that having deer culls will protect plants and shrubbery as well. Of course, we talked about tulips and hostas earlier. There are certain plants and flowers that are just irresistible to deer. And you can take out a huge chunk of the deer, and the remaining deer will still want to go to those irresistible plants. So what we think is more effective is to work on deterrence and protecting those plants and planting other plants and ornamentals that are not as attractive to deer, and just accepting that the deer are going to be here to stay. And it can become a normal part of living in deer country. Another concern that comes up a lot is, of course, it goes without saying, the public safety concerns or car-deer accidents. But it's really, the problem is really not the deer or the amount of the deer, the density, as much as the fact that the roads have come in and intersected and surrounded deer habitat. And studies have found that there's not necessarily a correlation between the density of the deer and the amount of auto accidents involved. A study done in Virginia a while back. Other factors are more important, like the amount of traffic, the speed limits, what kind of habitat and migration is going on around there, and visual barriers in certain areas that prevent you from seeing the deer coming at you, and vice versa as well. So we found that there are much more effective solutions. You probably heard about the City of Rochester Hills that has set up a pretty effective way of putting up signage at night, educating the public with their "Don't Veer for Deer" signs, and it's resulted in a decline of car deer accidents in the area. We've also found that it's not an effective tool, or if your objective is to reduce the risk of Lyme disease, that having a cull of deer also is not the most effective way to do it. There are many, many hosts for the black-leg tick, and if you remove some deer or most deer, they're just going to find other hosts or migrate to the remaining deer in the area as well. So that's why the CDC and other authorities recommend that having a hunt or a cull to kill deer is an effective. And there were studies done, like in Massachusetts, they removed 70% of the deer, but didn't see a marked reduction in tick bite because there are other hosts around for those pigs to go to. So we recommend other methods like a four-poster device that the deer stick their head into a device to get their feed, or tick tubes that they look like paper towel tubes that have cotton balls saturated with the tick medicine that mice will take back and build nests out. And other precautions to avoid contact with the ticks in the first place. So what does work? What we recommend, what our own wildlife biologists recommend, is what everyone else has been talking about as well. Really, really getting to the bottom of what is the problem in your community. Do you actually have a problem of overpopulation of deer, or is it a problem of urban planning, or the roads, or what is it? And make sure that data collection is well publicized and accessible to everyone. They had this problem in Manistee that the people really didn't have access or know about that poll that was put out there. And then assess it. And then what we recommend anyway is not to focus on the numbers, but designing a program that's really specific to your area. And then we have our wildlife biologist, Stephanie Boyles, who did come and consult with the city of Ann Arbor, is more than happy to come and work with you in your area to do a site assessment to see if our PZP program would be an effective program to try in your area to address whatever problems that you have. So we set out in 2012 to develop our immunocontraceptive program and develop a safe and effective tool. Of course, being effective is the most important thing, to humanely control wildlife populations. So we got an EPA registration and started conducting tests out west on wild horses in burros, and that's one of our biologists out west with a dart gun. And so the PZP, you probably already know all this, but it's just basically a protein that will coat the eggs and prevent them from being ovulated. And so
Doesn't prevent them being ovulated, doesn't it?
huh?
No, they still ovulate.
From being implanted.
So they still go into exercise.
So it can be injected by hand, but we prefer a dart. And it used to be when we were first starting out doing it, or when our biologists were starting out doing it, it required 2 injections in the first year and then annual boosters. Now they've developed a system where there's just 1 shot that can last 2 or more years. And that has been successful in wild horses and deer and some other species. And they now have some time-release pellets that can stimulate annual boosters as well. It has found to be pretty effective on wild horse populations in North Carolina and Maryland, in white-tailed deer populations, and in African elephants as well, South Africa. So we started out with an experimental deer study on Fire Island in New York. And our goal was to see how effective it is in deer, and can we dart more than 200 each year.